Hello, everyone. Today we're going to take a look mainly at the center gambit, but also at some other moves. We're going to check them out and see what happens. And let's begin. We're starting with the e4, e5. Definitely, we're going for it. And here, white is going for a d4, immediately breaking the center and trying to say that after the exchange of the pawns, the pawn on e4 is going to be the one which is going to be in the center. And for that, white will have some kind of advantage. So we're obviously accepting, we're taking on d4. What do we want to achieve? We want the queen to come and capture a pawn on d4 and challenge it with a knight move, developing our piece, getting some kind of Scandinavian, we can say reverse Scandinavian. We're going to get into that a bit later, but first let's start with a move such as knight f3. So this move is can be played, and here we have different ways to approach it. One of the most practical ways is trying to transpose to the other position. So after playing knight c6 in this position, we're actually going to transpose to the Scotch game or Scotch gambit. Depends what white is going to play in the next move. So that's why we recommend to play knight c6 in this position and just transpose, and all the rest you can check in that chapter. In case of f4, this has some independent value here. It's called Halas Gambit. It's not the best opening in the world, but yeah, pretty dubious definitely. So what can we do here about this move? So first of all, we can just continue developing and protecting our pawn on d4 since white is not taking it. And after knight f3, here we can see that white spent this extra tempo on this f4 move and didn't achieve yet much. So one of the main moves we're trying always to make work is d5. And in this particular case, we are going for it. We are immediately breaking the d5 and already asking some questions to white. Because, for example, in case white would take on e5, we will recapture with the queen. And we're going to protect the pawn on the d4. And there is still some question to white. What did they achieve? So obviously the main idea in this variation is to go for the e5. So trying to claim, okay, e5 is a very strong pawn, and the next move white wants to capture the pawn. But the thing is that, after move e5, actually, white is weakening a lot the square on f5. That's why we can already see that we can either develop the bishop on f5 or the knight on f5. Generally, knight on f5 would be a beautiful piece. And thanks to the pawn on the f4, there are no ideas of capturing the knight on h6 when it's coming there. So so bishop c5. First of all, we're just developing and defending the pawn. So what's white is not capturing the pawn on d4 yet. Also, what move is bringing to the position as potential d3 ideas, because bishop is going to be very dangerous in this diagonal, and we can already see or foresee in the future that king most likely will not castle short side. If king will castle short side, there are going to be some issues there, definitely. So in case in this position, white is developing just normally, knight b2, threatening some knight b3 ideas. We're just also developing knight h6, knight b3. We have still a square on b6. And even though in this way, white is recapturing the pawn on d4, after a couple of trades, finishing the development, we can see that, okay, in this position, there are two moves for white. Let's first look at bishop e3. So bishop e3 is trying to challenge our bishop on b6 and saying, okay, there is a beautiful diagonal there, but I don't want to allow bishop working there. So after bishop e3, we're immediately breaking the center. Because we are already finishing the development, we already castled, we have only bishop to develop, but we are all said and done. But the white's king is the one who is in trouble in the center of the board. So that's actually definitely not the best position for white to be in. And after ef6, we can see actually how great position of black is, that we can simply continue with rook e8 tempo move, because I mean there is nothing this pawn, there is no damage this pawn can do because the bishop is currently hanging, and after that we can recapture the pawn with the queen, creating even more pressure on the knight, on the bishop, and generally on the position of the king in this variation. So in case of bishop e2, also a developing move, looks logical, just developing the bishop. We're going to go all in with a c5. We're attacking the knight, and we are all ready for the play because we already finished the development. Our pieces are located nicely. This bishop as a very, very nice piece. Now it's blocked by the pawn, but we're going to push forward at some moment, and there are going to be definitely issues on this diagonal. And knight has to return back, and after c4, again introducing this beautiful bishop, saying you cannot castle yet. Knight goes back, but in this position, we can already see the power of our pieces, how they are active and working all together, because after this e5 move, which was played earlier, at the beginning of this variation, we have this very wonderful, beautiful square on f5, knight f5, and yeah, here basically there are a lot of issues for white. White cannot do really much here. I mean, we can say it's already winning or not winning position, but uh, we're dominating in this position for sure. Let's say in case white is playing something like c3, trying to defend the knight, we see we have already the queen h4 in the position, and there are big, big problems. We're ready to convert this to the full point. Okay, so in case bishop developing to d3, it looks very logical because bishop belongs to d3, and what white wants to say that the pawn on d4 is just going to be making this bishop not a good piece, which of course makes sense. But they have to be ready definitely for the knight b4 ideas, because once you develop bishop on d3, you have to be ready for this move. And we're not playing it now, but we have always this threat in the position. So knight h6, we're continuing fighting for the f5 square, castle, castle. And here a3, very logical because it stops knight b4. But after f6, we can see how actually weak this pawn chain is, and it's how easy it is to break it just down pawn by pawn. And let's not forget, we are still up a pawn, which may play a huge role in the endgame. After knight g5, so knight g5, of course, it makes a lot of sense, attacking the pawn on h7. It feels like, okay, it's super dangerous, but actually it's not so dangerous because let's not forget, we have this bishop on c8, which is developing with a huge power, first of all, offering a trade to this nice bishop on d3 and defending the pawn on h7. So this looks like a very nice position for black. And again, we're still up a pawn. Bishop b5 makes much, I mean, almost the most of sense, I would say, in this position, because first of all, there is a pin which white is creating, because our knight is defender of the pawn on the d4. So now there is a threat already with something like knight takes d4 or bishop takes on c6 at some moment. So we have to take care of it. And in this case, we're developing the knight not on h6, but on e7, so that we're also defending the knight. And we're saying, okay, we don't care. You can take the pawn on d4. We are not really trying to say our advantage is in extra pawn, because our advantage is actually in the faster and better development than white. After knight takes on d4, definitely we cannot really take the knight. But after e6, we are forcing white to make some decision. Does white want to take with the bishop on c6 or with knight? What to do? So after bishop takes c6, knight c6, in this position, let's say white wants to say, I'm going to take your knight, create some double pawns, create some weaknesses, but it's actually not really a bad position. It's an opposite. It's a great position for black, because first of all, looking at the bishop, we have a bishop pair, by the way. We can play something like a5, bishop a6, developing the bishop on that diagonal. Our bishops are going to be beasts. We're going to probably most likely short castle, play something like f6, try to break the center, rook e8. We don't know yet where queen goes. It depends, but queen can even be placed on d7, and the other rook can also be joining the play on e8. So yeah, definitely a great position for black, and white has to be really careful to find a way how to finish the development, even though it's very difficult to do. So if not knight f6, let's say bishop e3, trying to defend on d4, trying to stabilize somewhat. But here the problem is that tactically is not really working, because queen h4 is always, the check is always there, and even though white wanted to castle after g3, queen h3, we're once again blocking the castling opportunity for black. King is still in the center, and definitely there are many good things about our position. Bishop g4 is coming, attacking the queen. So basically in this case, we can see that white tried to stabilize on the dark squares, but on the light squares, there are huge weaknesses right now with the queen and the bishop entering the position of white on the king side. We have always the castling opportunities if we need it. We have always this break of f6. Our pieces are just wonderful. Great position. Okay, let's continue. So looking at all these moves, we can say that maybe there is also opportunity for the a3 move, because a3 makes a lot of sense after bishop d3. We were discussing there are many knight b4 ideas, so definitely makes a lot of sense. Knight a6, knight h6, sorry, we're continuing our development. We want to put the knight obviously on f5, very beautiful square. And here white is saying not only that white wants to play a3 as a prophylactical move, but also as an offensive move, because in this case, b4 is coming with a tempo. So we have to go back. Bishop b6, there is no other move. In case white is continuing pushing the pawn, playing something like b5, first of all, yes, white is getting back the pawn on d4, but that's it. Playing all this pawn moves is just weakening the position of white, because after takes, we're just going to play knight b5, knight f5. We're going to trade the only active piece of black. Sorry, of white. We're going to trade the only active piece, and after that we're just going to have enormous amount of active pieces. We will have a castle coming, f6, all kinds of moves. Queen h4, by the way, check is also in the picture. Let's not forget about the poor position of the king. King is super exposed to many different kind of tactics, so position is crushing. So that was a b5. In case white continues development like bishop d3, we're just going to follow up with a castle. Again, if there is any opportunities like knight g5, we have bishop f5 there, stopping any ideas. So f6, immediately breaking the pawn structure of white, and also at the same time we are stopping idea of knight g5. Again, if we're in time, to break the pawn chain, if we're in time to do this, we're also up a pawn meanwhile. There is nothing to complain about. There is a clear edge for black in this position. All right. Let's go a bit back. Yes, so we were looking at knight f3, knight f3 transposes. f4 is not such a great move. So let's look at other moves which can happen in the position besides queen takes d4, which is the most obvious. So c3. c3 is, again, it's a Danish gambit, and the main idea of it is for white to sacrifice a lot of pawns for huge activity of the pieces, for the huge development. And that's why we are not accepting, because, for example, if we would accept, first of all, there is a knight developing move also. At some lines, white can just say, okay, I'm going to develop bishop here, and if you take here, I will have two bishops beautifully located on these two diagonals. That's not what we want to do. We want to deal with this opening differently. We don't want to allow white this opportunity. And the same side, the same side, we don't want to white to allow c takes d4, because if c takes d4 is going to happen, there's going to be a super strong center. Let's say, how can it happen? Let's say knight c6. Then there is a strong center for white here. We don't want to allow this. What to do? Again, we're looking always at this one opportunity which we have in some of the positions, and which is a very good one. And also in this case, it's working, and it's d5. Breaking the center immediately, because white has no time right now to decide what to do, to take on d4, to take on d5, what exactly to do, because white is also down a pawn. Let's say, in case c takes d4, white is just taking, and white doesn't want to trade the queens. We are recapturing on e4. First of all, we're still up a pawn. Knight c3, trying to attack our pawn on e4. Knight f6. Bishop c4, continuing the development. Bishop e7. Knight g2. We're just continuing the development. There is not much. Knight c6. Even if at some moment white is recapturing the pawn on e4, which is, I don't see a near future where it happens, there is an isolated pawn on the d file, which we are going to be constantly attacking. I think that's one of the reasons why white actually cannot really win a pawn on the e4. Because, for example, after knight g3, we can see that this pawn is already hanging, and we can take it. We can decide if we want to trade the queens, or we want to take with a knight. But we shouldn't be afraid of trading the queens, definitely. So that was this cd4 option. Let's see what happens if queen takes. It might seem illogical to take with a queen, because you're bringing the queen first to the game. There are definitely some ideas later in the game to attack the queen, but you're not creating an isolated pawn like in previous variation. So let's see, queen takes d4. We're definitely first defending and attacking, defending the pawn on d5 and attacking the pawn on e4. And after very obvious move e5, we're going for knight e4. And now we are introducing a threat of bishop c5, challenging white and asking, what are you going to do about your about your f2 pawn? So yeah, bishop e3, bishop c5, and well, everything is defended, but the pawn on e5 has some issues. Knight f3 trying to defend castle. We can see how comfortable the position is for black right now. Trade of the bishops makes also a lot of sense. And after knight takes d2, there is a question, how are you going to recapture on d2? And after, okay, queen takes on d2 looks logical, but we can see that queen already made wait, how many moves? Like 4 or something, or 5. No, 4 moves. So yeah. And after rook e8 on the next move, we want to capture a pawn, and it looks like that it's going to fall, because we have also in the worst case bishop g4 attacking the knight, which is defending the pawn. So that's going to be definitely a huge advantage for black, and potentially winning one if we can convert an extra pawn later in the endgame. That was an e5 move, which was actually looking very logical. What happens if white takes? That's another option. It looks like a very healthy choice for black. The only problem is with this choice that white is saying that black is equalized and white doesn't want to fight for an advantage. Because after queen takes d5, there is no better move than queen takes. Queen has to take, knight takes, knight f3, and knight d7, and we have an endgame. On the one hand, it might look like a very, symmetrical endgame. We have pawns on the both flanks. We have c, b, a pawns, and h, g, f. There is no imbalance in the position in terms of that. We have we have traded only 2 pawns and queens. That's the only thing which we traded, and we have all other pawn pieces standing on the board. But there is one difference in the position. We have a pawn on the c7, and white is having a pawn on c3, which weakened the d3 square, which is highlighted very nicely here. So our ideas could be going for something like knight c5, bishop f5, trying to target that d3 weak spot, and it definitely would give black some chances in this endgame. And definitely anything can happen. Even if right now position is saying it's equal position, anything can happen in the endgame. There is always a human factor. So even if you're playing against someone who you would like to win against, there is still enormous amount of play. And by the way, the less experienced player in the endgame usually is the one who can make mistakes earlier. So that's why you shouldn't be worried in getting the equal position. Equal position is not yet the draw, right? That's kind of the deal. So we looked at the e5 push, we look at the take on d5. Now let's look at something completely different. It's bishop g5. Bishop g5 is creating a pin. There is no take on e4 happening right now with a knight. And there is also another threat to take the pawn on the d5, or first of all, take the knight, and then to take the pawn. So in this position, we have to act accordingly. It might feel like we can take on e4 with a pawn and win a pawn, but after d takes e4, queen takes, king takes, knight d2. There is an attack on our pawn. We have to do something. There is still this very, very unpleasant pin. Bishop f5 trying to defend, knight is coming in the next move, and the pawn is going to be taken. Now it's actually white who is more developed. Now it's white's pieces which are located much better. So in this endgame, we don't want to go. We want to go only on the good turns in the endgame. We don't want to get in the endgame where our pieces are not active. So knight b7, we're going for this move. We defend the knight, first of all. Then we threaten to take on e4 again because there is no trade of the queens. In case of bishop of b5, we're going to play to answer it with a c6. And let's not forget that knight is defending the c5 square where bishop belongs. So that's a huge threat. In case of e5, trying to say, all right, there is a pin, I'm attacking. Sorry, I would rather make it threat. There is a pin. Wait, why wasn't it threat? Sorry. So yeah, there is a pin. There is an attack on the knight. The knight is going to fall, but bishop c5, tempo. We are attacking the queen. Where does the queen go? If queen goes to f4, trying to defend on e5 and also attack our knight, we're going to play queen e7. We're creating a pin and attacking the pawn at the same time. Knight f3, defending the pawn, looks very logical. But now h6. Now in this position, there is no threat of taking on f6 because of this pin. So h6 is being played, bishop takes, pawn takes, and in the next move, for sure, the pawn is going to fall on e5. We're going to have an extra pawn and winning position. Bishop takes f6 looks like an option, definitely. Gf6. So now there is, of course, no time for white to take on f6 due to the problem with the queen. So queen takes the pawn on d5. c6. Again, another time challenging the queen. Queen has to go away. Queen d2. And in this position, we're playing queen e7. We can take later on e5 with a pawn or with a knight. It is going to be, we're going to see what's going to be the next move, and we will decide accordingly. But our main idea, of course, is to finish the development, to develop the bishop. We're having a bishop pair. Let's not forget about that. We're going to follow up with the castle. Our rook is going to be on the d file. In case, actually, let's look at the position. In case white is castling short, there are going to be some problems on the g file. And of course, if white is going to castle long side, the question is, how are you going to do it in the near future? Because developing the knight is not so easy. Maybe I pointed out too many arrows. Let me just remove some of them. just for you to understand. So in case, for example, white wants to castle long side, there are some problems because this knight, in case it develops on a3, you have to consider bishop taking on a3. And it cannot be developed on d2 because of the queen. So you have to move the queen, you have to develop the knight, you have to castle. But then bishop maybe is coming to e6, attacking the pawn on a2. So many, so many things in this position that white has to take care of. So this was the e5 move. Looked logical, but doesn't really work. There is another move, queen takes d5. First of all, it's possible because after knight takes d5, there is bishop d8. So the queen trade is happening on the board. But in this position, we're not capturing with a king on d8, but we have a very beautiful move, knight b4. We're creating a threat, knight c2, and taking the bishop. And of course, white has to take the knight, right? There is no other move. Because, of course, if white is just defending, then we're going to take. And in the next move, you will have to take the knight. But then you just spend the extra tempo on the knight move, which didn't make sense. So, of course, white has to take sooner or later. And here, bishop takes on b4 with a check. Knight c3, trying to defend. And king d8. So what did we achieve? We didn't lose a pawn, first of all, which queen took on d5 immediately. So we didn't lose a pawn, or we have a bishop pair. We have, potentially, it depends also where the kings are going to be, but it looks like 3 against 2 in this position is going to be easier to push. Let's put it like this, yeah. So 3 against 2 on the queen side, definitely going to be easier to create a passer. In case e takes d5, also possible move, taking with a pawn, not trading the queens. But here we're going with our bishop c5, very beautiful move. In case of queen h4, so it would be nice to give some check for black, but there is no check actually. So queen h4 looks like creating even more pressure on the knight on f6, but everything is defended so far. So castle, we are ready to go out with our pieces. There are problems with the king, with the development. The pieces are standing and waiting for something. So bishop d3, h6, taking, and the problem is the d5 is hanging. Of course, we're going to recapture the pawn, but after we're taking on d5, we're going to attack on g2, the bishop on d3. We were ready to develop with our rook e8. There is a big problem with the king because it's unsafe. So yeah, white is definitely suffering here. In case of bishop f6, which also is a move, we're going for queen f6. And I think it's also very important idea, which we also have in other chapters, queen takes f6. So we have a choice here. Of course, we cannot capture with the knight because of bishop which is falling. That would be, of course, ideal. Taking with a pawn would create a double pawn here, very weak ones. And we have a third choice, queen take. And queen take is offering a trade of the queen, which usually when we are down material, in this case, actually we're down a pawn, usually it's very difficult for a player to go for a queen trade, or not only just queen trade, but maybe for some trades of the pieces in the position, because they would say you're simplifying the position, you're creating maybe more chances for the opponent to convert to the winning endgame up a pawn. Of course, and if you're just trading all the pieces in this position and have the king and the pawns, obviously the pawn endgame is most likely we're going to be losing for black. But that's not what we are doing with a queen trade. With a queen trade, we are reaching the position where even though we're down a pawn, we are having a very much better development. And in our next couple of moves, you're going to win the pawn back. Because in case, of course, maybe white can try to defend the pawn, but they're not going to even be able to do it. We have much better development. Let's say bishop c4 is protecting the pawn, white is stubborn, white is defending the pawn. We're playing knight e4, attacking another pawn, creating another problem. And in this case, the pawn is already gone. The pawn is falling. There is no way to defend it because after knight h3, we have also bishop h3 creating double pawns, and then we would take another pawn. So this doesn't really work out. And of course, if f3 is being played, we're just jumping here and winning the rook exchange. So bishop b5 check looks like a decent move. Idea of bishop b5 is, I would say, maybe to trade the bishop, because we kind of have to play bishop d7. Bishop d7, bishop d7, and king d7. So white says, okay, they managed to trade the bishop, but actually, even though we gave up our bishop pair advantage in a way, we're having a huge advantage and domination in the development. Rooks are coming to the d and e files. There is a problem always with the knight on g4. First of all, the pawn is still hanging on d5, and there is no real way. I mean, in case it's defended, there is this knight g4 idea which we were talking about. So many errors. I'm sorry for that, but yeah, the position is crushing for. I mean, white is completely under huge pressure and a lot of problems to solve for white. So that was actually queen d4. What happens if e pawn takes on d5? So not c pawn takes on d4, not queen takes on d4, but e pawn takes on d5. We're going to capture with a queen, pawn takes, and let's say again, we have reached the position of IQP, isolated queen's pawn. We didn't do much, but we reached this position. So here we just have to continue the development. We just have to be very practical. So knight c6. Knight c6 looks a very good move, developing the piece, also targeting the pawn on d4. So what if bishop e3, defending with a bishop, and it's actually, it's fair to say that white can defend the pawn by some tactics, which we're going to see later. But in case white doesn't see it and plays something like bishop e3, we play bishop b4, knight c3. We don't have to remove our queen because there is still a pin. The knight is pinned, knight cannot move. Knight f6, knight g2 looks like defending and wants to play a3 in the next move. Bishop g4, we are creating another pin. We have so many pins on the knight a3, bishop e2 first, queen e2, then taken on c3, and castle. And even though we can look at this position that there is a bishop pair for white, but this bishop is more like a big pawn, and this bishop still has issues to coming outside. So definitely there is a nice edge for black in this position, and we're not even down material. We're going to develop our rooks in the next move. We're going to remaneuver our knight to f5. There are weaknesses on the queen side, and there is a question still for white. What are you going to do with the king? Where are you going to castle? Knight f3, developing, defending on d4 also. But here, there is definitely bishop g4 in this position, similar like in knight g2, but bishop e2 is actually neutralizing the whole threat, because here after queen a5 there is a castle, and here the problem is that after we take on c3, it's not a check. So after bishop takes c3, pawn takes, queen takes, we're winning a pawn. But the problem is that the queen is going to be attacked. In this case, we have bishop attack. The rook can be always attacking the queen. So there are going to be issues, and I'm actually very scared for our queen, and I think it might be even trapped. Our king is not yet castled. I mean, we cannot allow this position. So that's why super important that we start with queen a5. So now this queen a5 is actually coming with a threat. If we compare it to the previous position, white castled in this position, but here there is still bishop e2 has to be played. So that's why white has to do something about the issue on c3. So let's say queen c2, then we're going to just castle short. So we're just waiting in this position. We're just, I mean, we already had some bishop f5 here, but it's not, I mean, it's better to make a prophylactical move, finish the development, and then we introduce this bishop f5 move in the position. Because in this case, let's say white is playing something like bishop e2, then we have bishop f5, queen takes, and then we have we are taking the material. And there are no checks, forking, there is nothing. Okay. So yeah, that was it. And also one small thing, that in case a bishop comes to d3, we can play bishop g4. We can target this knight. So queen a5, sorry, it was already played. Queen b3 may look like a more logical move, not inviting bishop f5 in this position. So better square for a queen, defending the knight, defending everything. Looks like a good move. So castle, and here bishop c4 is played. And as always, I would like to ask you in this position to stop the video for a moment and try to find the best move for black. So I hope you spend some time on this move. It's maybe not so easy to see it, but once you realize that actually in this position, most of the pieces of white right now are in the queen side. And our threats with the queen and the bishop are already neutralized. So what do we do if the piece is already not needed on the queen side? We're moving it on the other side. And we're saying, now queen is working on h5. So we're just playing on the queen side first, creating problems, creating issues. Most of the pieces came, the queen, bishop, all came to the queen side. And now we go back to the king side and we're going to create some issues there. White is castling. White is castling short. And here, the follow-up move, of course, it's very important, not only to see queen h5, but also to see bishop d6. So we created some issues. We created a threat on c3. All pieces went to defend there. And now we just went all the way back to defend, not all the way back, but all the way on the other side of the board to attack the king side. And also we introduced the knight a5 with opportunity of taking the bishop on c4. So that's definitely a position where we are very comfortable. We have a nice edge in this position. Definitely we're not like crushing or winning here, but we are having some very good prospects on an attack on the king side. That was knight f3 we were talking about. So let's say a3, what happens? Definitely we have to take, because if we just go back, then there is going to be a double attack. Oops, sorry. There is going to be a double trouble. All right, knight c3, pawn takes, and bishop g4. All pieces are in the game. The king is left to castle, and after knight f3, queen a5, again creating another threat, similar to the previous line, by the way. This position we can already stress, like placing knight to d5, long castle, bringing the rooks to the position on the d and e file. Yeah, the position looks completely dominating for black. I'm sorry, we looked at this. Yeah, we looked at everything. Okay, sorry. So yeah, we were looking at the bishop e3 move. So let's go to the main one. Main move in this Danish gambit. So knight f3 is a better way to defend on d4. Bishop g4. It looks like after knight f3, we're having this pin. The next move we're going to take the pawn. But there is one thing. After bishop e2, there is a tactical problem why we cannot actually take the pawn. Bishop f3, queen d4, bishop c6, and we resign. So let's not allow that in the real game. Let's just keep it in the back at the back of our mind that there is such issue with this knight on c6, which can be taken with a tempo. So that's why we play bishop b4 check. Knight c3, and now we take, but again, Can we take on d4? No, we cannot take on d4. Very important not to miss it. And here we have a very beautiful move, queen c4. We are attacking the knight on c3. No castle is possible. And very cute little idea is that in case bishop goes back, because it looks like a logical move, right? In case bishop goes back to e2, we already can take on d4. There is no this bishop check on c6. So that's a cute little move, and which says, okay, black is dominating. And actually, this position, if I'm not mistaken, is discussed in more detail in the Scotch Gambit. Yeah, this position is discussed there. We had the other move order. So check out in the other chapter more in more detail this position and this line. So many things can transpose. This is just wonderful. All right, we go back. We go back to the c3 move. So that was the c3. So that was a c3 move, which is a Danish gambit. And now we're going for the next move. What is possible in this position besides queen takes d4? And it's bishop c4. Bishop c4, it can be, we can tell that it's also center gambit, but the official center gambit is definitely when the queen captures the pawn. So in this position, we continue development and defending the pawn. Knight c6 is always good just to develop and defend the pawn. Sorry. All right, so knight f3. And again, knight f3 is played. And another practical decision to play knight f6 and transpose again to this position. So we're going to transpose to the Scotch again, and you're going to find more details in that chapter. There is definitely possibility for some other move, but try to create something else if we have knight f6 to transpose and learn less lines. c3, it's an independent move, and or it's not independent. Actually, white doesn't want to transpose. Yes, it's actually independent. So white doesn't want to transpose into the Scotch and play c3. So here we go knight f6, attacking on e4. e4 is hanging. And after knight f3, then we're going to again to transpose. So sometimes we do transpose to the Scotch gambit or Scotch game, depends. So yeah, sometimes there is a transposition, but it's not only because it's practical, but also sometimes the best move is actually to transpose to that position. So c takes d4. Now there are 2 pawns in the center for white. So we're taking one. We have to do something about it. And here bishop f7. So if not bishop f7, okay. In this case, then there is an extra pawn for black. There is no compensation for white for that. I mean, there is not much white can do in this position. In case, let's say, something like queen e2, we have queen e7. There are no problems with this knight. We shouldn't be worried. Also, there could be d5. I'm not yet... No, I think d5 is a bit... Even though d5 maybe is also possible move, but queen e7 probably just safe. So that's why white has to try something, and it's bishop f7. Okay, we accept that. Queen h5, g6. The problem for white is that the only piece which is attacking is a queen. There are no bishop anymore, so bishop was sacrificed. So queen d5 check, king g7, queen e4, and bishop b4, and then the next move we're going to actually win a queen. In case, yeah, white is not going to play some strange move like king f1 or something like that. So yeah, rookie Actually, even that rook e8 and rook e1 is coming. All right, so this completely winning position. The bishop f7 doesn't really work. That was about bishop c4. So now it's time for us to come finally to the center gambit, queen takes d4. We can see that this position resembles one of the opening with the black pieces. It resembles the Scandinavian. For those of you who doesn't know, we're just going to briefly show. So e4, d5, that's how black is starting. So normally white is taking. There are also other moves, but definitely the most challenging way or the way trying to punish the Scandinavian is to take the pawn, queen takes, and knight c3 is typically top move. It's normally always played knight c3 in this position, attacking the queen. And if we compare this position to the starting position of the center gambit, we can see that the only difference with that position and this is that pawn is on e7 in that case, and here we have pawn on e4. Is it good or bad thing? I mean, we can say first of all that it's a good thing because the pawn is in the center already. But on the other hand, let me maybe say quickly it. Yeah, I would rather say it quickly now. Maybe emphasize later. In Scandinavian, pawn very typically goes to e6. It's a very typical square. So in this case, it would be e3. Because there could be opportunity of going bishop c5 and trying to attack the f7 square. So that's why in some cases it could be even a bad thing that the pawn is on e4. So okay, knight c6, definitely we're challenging the queen. Where does the queen go? There are many moves in this position. We're going to look all of them. Queen d1, first of all, going all the way back. Sometimes it's the best option, but knight f6. We already have two pieces into the game. Pawn is knight is attacking the pawn on e4. What to do? Bishop d3, trying to defend, but then we are breaking with a d5, e5, queen d5. We have a huge play. We're going to castle in the next two moves and just going to enjoy the position. A small edge, but this is nice. Bishop g5, trying to pin us, trying to say you cannot take the pawn on e4. But here, bishop e7, we're going to play. And here, what is going to happen if white is playing knight c3? Please stop the video and try to find the best move for black. So here, I hope you spent some time. I hope you found the move. It's actually knight e4. Knight e4, because after bishop e7, queen e7, black is defending. After knight e4, bishop g5, winning a piece, right? No, a pawn, sorry. Not a piece, because we gave up a piece. Yeah, the pawn. We're winning a pawn. But definitely winning position for, or not winning position, but huge edge. Huge advantage for black. Okay, that was bishop g5. Knight c3, trying to defend, and bishop b4. Bishop d2, logically. There is idea of playing bishop c3 and trying to win the pawn, but we shouldn't always rush after the material. Actually, this position is good. Actually, this position is very good for for black, because we have so many active pieces. But after queen g4, knight c3, queen takes, check. The problem here is that this knight is going to fall. There are going to be problems here on the king side. So this position is slightly better for white. That's why we don't take on c3. We are not rushing after the material, but we are rushing after the development, and we're castling bishop d3. Now, actually, it would be a threat already to take on c3. So that's why bishop d3 is played, defending the pawn on e4. We are bringing another piece and another attacker on the pawn. Knight g2, bishop c3, knight c3, and now d5. Now there is a problem because this is a pin. The pawn cannot take. The pawn is under attack. We are threatening to take in the next move, and now it's actually already amazing position, a clear, better advantage for black in this case. So bishop d3, trying to defend, another option. d5 instantly. Yeah, I think it's also very important position to remember. Yeah, there is always this d5 break, and we shouldn't forget about it. So if d5 is working at some moment, just consider it. Like if there is nothing against d5, just consider it. Try to calculate. It's definitely worth it, because in this position after d5, there is a huge threat of d4 and taking on e4. So after e d5, queen d5, we're attacking the pawn on g2, creating a threat. After knight f3, bishop g4, creating a pin, attacking the knight, queen e2, and here we are not afraid to lose the castle, because if we bring one of the pieces back, oh, that's going to be not good. First of all, okay, this would immediately lose the game because the knight is taking a queen. But we are not bringing our pieces back. We're just playing king f8. We're not afraid because we are introducing the rook to e8. We're introducing the knight to d4. All the very beautiful pieces are coming to the position. And in case of the castle, definitely we can move the queen away. We can consider taking on c3 to try to spoil the pawn structure, but queen h5 is always in the pocket. Rook e8, knight d4, and there are going to be huge issues on f3. That was queen d1. Queen a4. Queen a4. Now, actually, this is the moment where we feel the most the transposition to Scandinavian. The ones of you who know the opening, and again, there is a pawn on the e4. In comparison to the Scandinavian, where the pawn is on e7 in this position. Again, I would like to highlight that most cases the pawn is going to e3 also because sometimes queen from a4, or in Scandinavian from a5, can reach the h4 square, creating, some pinning opportunities on this diagonal. So that's why it's kind of also an issue that the queen can go only halfway the board and not going, not continue going to the king side. So bishop c5. That's kind of a point, what I was highlighting earlier, that the pawn usually is belonging to e3 square in this position to stop this attack of the bishop from c5. But okay, it's still possible to play like this. The knight c3, d6, very logical, we're just developing, knight g7. And here we are transposing to the same position we have just had. But we're going to first look. So here knight c3 is the main move. We're going to transpose there. But first, let's look at the bishop moves. In case of bishop b5, knight g7, we are, of course, defending our problematic knight. Castle, knight c3, and bishop g4. Reaching a very nice position. We finished the development. We fulfilled all the principles. Of course, we can say that maybe this pawn is better than the pawn on d6 because it's in the center, but looking, more detailed this position, the pawn on a4 could be even a weakness because there is no way to defend it with a pawn, while our pawn structure is fully defended by each other. So there are no weaknesses for black. There could be a weakness only for white. That's true. So even though this pawn is in the center, it could be a weak one. In case bishop g5, and I think it's also very important to remember that, of course, there are like 3 moves to block the pin. There is f6, knight g7, and knight f6. f6, it feels like a bit too early to weaken all the light squares. Talking about knight f6, we don't want to step into the spin. So that's why playing knight g7 feels like a very nice option, very nice idea. So knight e7, we just don't want to have the pin. Later we want to play f6, and at some moment maybe f5. But you don't want to commit to it yet because it would weaken, in case white's bishop is coming here, it would weaken some dark squares. We don't want that. So knight c3, castle, bishop b5, and now f6. Now what we wanted. And after bishop goes back, king h8, just continuing the development, and a6, asking some questions of the queen. Actually, queen is almost trapped here. Bishop has to, I think bishop has to take on c6, because if bishop goes back, then queen is going to be trapped on b3. So bishop e3, we take fe, creating some problems, and going king h8, removing king from this diagonal, which we're talking about earlier. And well, weaknesses are here in the position. It's tough position for white. Clear advantage or slight advantage for black, definitely. Long castle. This is what also usually black is doing in Scandinavian defense. And here we go again with our option of f6. If you look after long castle at this beautiful pawn on f2 and say, oh, wait a second, we can take it. The only thing is the position, I mean, it's possible. It definitely is possible, and that's why maybe white is not going to long castle in this position. But after bishop takes f2, there is a very nice idea for white, which is e5. Even though this position is, it's all cool for according to computer, the position is just getting crazy. The position is just, I mean, it's just on fire. The position is on fire, and I don't advise it. That's why, please, let's not do this. Let's first of all get rid of the pin. Let's second of all control more the e5 square, not allowing the e5 break, and do it with a tempo. So f6, bishop h4. Of course, the disadvantage of this line is that bishop is already defending upon f2. But we are fine with that. We're playing king f8, again removing it from the diagonal. If queen c4 is played, queen is trying, try to find some better location. We play queen e8. Very beautiful move. So potentially we also remove queen from this pin because we want to play maybe f5 at some moment. But on the other hand, we want to stop e5 ideas because due to this pin on the queen, the ideas of e5 were always there in the picture. We want to remaneuver the knight. e5 is a beautiful outpost for a knight. Also, we have ideas of pushing the pawn on the queen side, playing a6, b5, b4, creating attack against the king. That's normally what we do when we have opposite colored kings. Bishop d3 is normal move. And here we play a6, and we try to implement the idea again in life, which I just discussed with you. And due to the awkward location of the queen on the queen side, it's very likely to happen because there is not much to do with the queen, and white has to be very careful not to trap for their queen not to be trapped on the queen side. But for that, probably they will have to weaken the pawn structure. So definitely a clear advantage for black. Okay, that was all about the bishop g5 move. Let's come to the main line into which we transpose against via this move order. So in case knight c3, d6, knight g7, and then again knight f3, g6, d6, knight c3, and knight g7. Again, we're playing this knight g7 because it's again neutralizing the bishop g5 ideas. Bishop e2, castle, castle. Everything is logical, and a6. So what we want to do, we want to push b5. We want to attack the queen. And now queen is already in some trouble, has to do something. Queen c4. So that it's not being blocked or locked up all the way on the queen side. So bishop g4. The next move, we want to connect the queen, connect the rooks, playing queen d7, rook comes to e8. Definitely king h8. Prophylactical move has to be played because of this queen, which is looking at our king on the diagonal, and f5, where we are playing for the f5 in this position, opening up the f file and creating some other weaknesses or weak squares on the f file. That was about the queen a4 move. Let's look at the queen d3. Queen d3 is not so bad move, but it feels a little bit illogical, and it's not the main move. It's pretty rare. The main point that many times in the main line, which we're going to look later, queen on e3 is kind of misplaced. And always after we castle, there is always this rook e8 move trying to exploit the position of the queen. But there are some problems with this queen d3. And that's first problem, which is coming, is d5 is actually possible in this position. So the problem here that we're going to see later what happens if white takes. Let's start with the moves which are not taking. So knight c3, in case of knight c3, we immediately push forward, d4, knight d5, knight f6, putting more pressure on all the pieces which are standing for white. So bishop g5, of course, very logical, trying to pin. But knight b4, super strong move, because after knight b4, bishop b4, c3, dc, we're opening up the d file, and there is a queen b5 check. Okay, let's look quickly queen d8. So what happens if take, queen d8, castle, long castle, king e8, bc, and bishop c3, and we have very beautiful endgame. In this position, we're up something, no? We're up one pawn. We are up one pawn, and yeah, beautiful endgame, definitely good to play. But what happens in case of queen b5 is a double attack. If you would like to figure it out, please stop the video and try to find the best move. Not try to stop the video, but stop the video and try and find the best move for black. So I hope you found the move. It's actually very beautiful, very nice. Knight d7. It's difficult to see this move if you don't really know it, but it's possible. First, what is it doing? It's putting the board on fire. Bishop is hanging, queen is hanging, but the huge problem is that there is not much you can do. In case of queen b4, we take on b2. The threat, of course, is to take on a8, a1. Queen takes, and we recapture the bishop. We're up a pawn. We're getting into a beautiful and very comfortable endgame where we have huge winning chances. But in case bishop d8 is happening, there is pawn takes on b2, and if queen takes b4, we're taking the rook and promoting to a queen. So in that way, we return our queen back on the board. Very nice and beautiful move, knight to d7. So in case of knight f3, another opportunity. Queen e7, putting even more pressure on the e4, pinning the king or pawn to the king. And in case of queen d5, we're playing knight f6, because now the pawn is really hanging on e4. We can take it. We have definitely a big initiative and huge attack in this position. We can develop our bishop. We'll see where we are going to develop it, but also possible to d7. We can long castle. Taking the pawn is definitely another option. So many moves, many ideas in the position. In case queen takes on d5, offering a trade to the queens. It's not the most logical move from white, because from white perspective, you would like to create some kind of an edge for your position. But okay, let's say queen d5 is played, queen takes d5, pawn takes, and knight b4. We're attacking c2, we're attacking the d5. Bishop b5 check looks like a logical move. In case knight a3, knight d5, we're just taking the pawn on d5. And okay, first of all, let's compare the two knights. The knight on d5 is a beautiful one, knight on e3 is not so much. Again, we're getting a pretty equal endgame. But due to our knight already being developed on the d5, and it's actually our turn right now, we're going to develop faster, we're going to have an advantage in the development, and most likely we'll have more active pieces than white. So in case bishop b5, check, we lay bishop d7, bishop takes. and king d1. Again, we are recapturing the pawn on the d5. We want to continue development knight f6, bishop c5, bringing rooks to the e and d files. And again, saying and pointing out that we are faster in the development, we are better at the development. Even though the position is like equal, there are chances, definitely. So what happens if pawn takes, which looks, I mean, it looks logical because you don't want always to trade the queens from white and immediately simplify to the equal endgame. But we have knight b4 in this position, and the problem in this position that even though white can keep an extra pawn because there are checks which white can execute. So in this case, queen e4. We can play queen e7 again. If white is going to trade, we're going to enter the same endgame we just discussed. Case queen e3. Actually, very interesting. It's not so accurate because here we play bishop e7. The problem is that the queen from e4, it was at least defending the pawn on the c2, but in this case, there is already a huge threat of knight c2. Queen e2 also feels good, defending the pawn on c2. And here we play again queen e7. In case, of course, queens have been traded, we are reaching similar endgame we have just had, but even better, because in this particular case, we had the same position, but with a knight on g8. But this one is already with a knight on d5. We have two active knights. Definitely very pleasant and comfortable position to play. Objectively, it's equal, but definitely you're playing against human and not engine, so you shouldn't be too worried about that. Let's go back. Knight a3. Yeah, knight a3, trying to defend because knight c2 was a threat in the position. We recapture the pawn on the d5 and just very comfortable position. There are some problems for white to solve. This knight on a3 is not ideal, and we are ready to finish the development. Place knight to f6. The bishop will see if it gets to the g4 or maybe f5. We can also go for the long castle. So there are many opportunities possible in this position. So we discussed most of the queen moves. The last one was queen d3. Queen c4 is also a move, but it's a bit illogical. Feels a bit similar to queen d3. But it's the place where the bishop wants to stand. So that's why it's not a very good square, but still white is trying to find some better square for a queen, and it's possible. It's definitely possible. So knight f6, we are introducing d5 idea again in the picture. Knight c3, knight f3, bishop g5 are possible. Let's start with bishop g5 in this particular case. So bishop g5, the problem is that in this position, white either allowing d5 to be played or losing the bishop pair. Because after h6, in case bishop takes on f6, queen f6, we won a bishop pair, and there is no compensation for the bishop pair. And as we know, bishop pair is a material advantage. Bishop h4, going away. We're pushing for g5, actually very important concept. Again, if we have at any moment d5, we can play it. We have to consider it. I'm not saying that it's 100% working, but we have to consider it. And in this case, playing g5, first, neutralizing the pin, bishop goes away, and we push for d5. Also with a tempo, because we attack the queen and the pawn. Pawn takes, knight takes. In the next move, we're going to fianchetto our bishop on... It's more advanced fianchetto, but fianchetto the bishop on g7. We can short castle, we can actually long castle as well. So we are going to see bishop e6, queen e7 are the moves which are going to play. Rooks are coming in the center, and definitely huge development advantage for black. And that's why the position is actually already winning. So what happens if knight f3? Again, if we have d5, we have to consider it. And here it's working again. Again, it's a tempo on the queen and the pawn. So here we don't even have to consider e5 moves because it's not legal. You have to, I mean, it's legal, but you don't want to lose a queen. So here again, take happens. We are ready to continue development. Bishop e6, queen f6, we can castle, we can castle long, or we can also castle short, definitely. We're going to see how the game is going to unfold, but definitely the position is very pleasant, and there is a slight edge for black. So knight c3 looks the most logical because it's stopping idea of the d5. Bishop b4, trying to pin, trying again to introduce this idea. Bishop g5, again h6. Similar to the previous line, bishop h4, g5. d5 is possible, let's play it. Queen takes. We're not scared to trade the queens. a3 attacking the bishop. We have to do something, we have to take. Somewhere we have to take. But not yet, because after castle, queen takes, we have an intermezzo move. In this position, in case the bishop is taken, we have a very beautiful move, rook e8. And there is a big problem. King doesn't have squares. And if bishop comes, we're just winning the queen. And of course, if queen is coming here, we're just taking a queen. So, wow, this is an incredible move. So in this position, wait, we looked already. So queen takes d5, bishop takes, and yeah, this looks like interesting endgame. Even though there is a bishop pair for white, there are still some issues for white to solve due to the development issues. There are definitely, if we can say that there is a compensation for black. If not, it's just slightly better endgame with the weaknesses for white. Knight g2, continuing the development, defending the knight on c3. And again, we have d5, we played d5, we can go for it. Takes, bishop d2, knight c3, and queen e7. Okay, this feels like a pretty equal position, but definitely there is initiative for us for the black side, because simply we are ready to finish development in the next move, and it's going to be actually with a tempo. We are ready to castle. We're ready to castle long or short. We're going to see where. And yeah, definitely very pleasant to play. So bishop d2, trying to stop the d5, which looks the most logical, since now we cannot play d5. So we castle, and now we go a5. So the main idea of the a5 definitely to defend the bishop, and now knight e4, knight e5 is the big threat. Also, the thing is in this position is that there are actually generally two main moves. A d6 in the position. So what is d6 doing? So d6, first of all, we are ready to develop the bishop, and we are not yet ready to play d5 move. That's why we're playing d6, and later maybe we can play for d5, but for now it's not really possible, so it makes sense. Also bishop e6 is being played. And the other move is rook e8, trying to put more pressure on the pawn on e4, and waiting to see if there is going to be any opportunity for us to break with a d5. So these are two main moves in the position. But we're opting out for the third option, which is not the main one, which is a5. And yeah, after this move, we are going to see actually what white is doing. And it makes a lot of sense because it's defending the bishop on the b4. Knight on e5 is going to be a threat. So f3, let's say f3 is played. With f3, white is defending the pawn on e4, at the same time also introducing the ideas of creating an attack. And in this position, we play knight e5, attacking the queen. Queen has to go somewhere. In case of d4, we're going for d6. So in case of queen coming to the d4, there is no real sense in playing rook e8 because the e-pawn is protected. There is no queen on the e-file. We cannot really go for the d5. So in case of queen d4, again, d6 is played. If bishop f4, trying to put more pressure on the knight, we play queen e7, very logical, removing queen from the pin and defend the knight on e5. Knight g2, bishop e6, c6, and queen g3. So queen was remaneuvered to the king side. So here definitely there is a knight h5 idea, but the problem is our queen is unprotected. So we're not going to get the bishop. So that's why we have to continue attack on the queen side. We push for a4. a3, white has to stop at some moment, otherwise a3 would be in there. Bishop c5, sorry, not knight c5, bishop c5, and we are ready to go for the b5, b4 pushes. And in case white is taking the pawn on e5, which looks like idea, there is bishop e3, and the queen is going to be lost in the next move due to this very beautiful double attack, discovered check. Or is it discovered check? It's not actually discovered check, because if king would be on e5, that's a double attack, actually. Very beautiful and completely losing for white. So going back, bishop g5 is another pin which can be created by white, and they are going for it. h6, very useful move in many positions, definitely to ask a question to the bishop. What do you want to do? Bishop h4, one of the most principled ways, just to try to keep the bishop on the diagonal. Bishop c5 looks like a great move, but it was not very clear, because after queen c5, pawn takes, rook takes, knight d5, it's not clear position at all. It's not clear at all. It looks like that we are up. What do we have? We have rook for two pieces, and we have for two light pieces, and we have actually no, wait, what do we have? Sorry, we have an exchange. We're exchange up, but the problem is that we have problems on c7, on f6, and position is looking very, very messy and complicated. So let's not get into the complex positions if they're complicated for us. And let's play bishop d7, preparing the bishop c5 move. So we are preparing it. In case of king b1, moving the king away, there is bishop c5 already there, bishop queen d2, and knight e4 is already happening, because after bishop takes, there is a check on e2, and we're winning a pawn. So that would be a huge blunder from white. Knight d5, trying to put even more pressure on the knight on f6. Looks like a definitely move, but after g5, we are breaking the pin, and we're saying, where are you going to put your bishop? Bishop g3. Then we're taking on d5. We want to trade that knight on d5 because it's super strong. So e takes d5, rook e8, defending, and after h4, we play bishop c5, the move which we wanted to play. Queen c3, knight g3, and in this position we are threatening to take on the h4. And also the problem here is that the take on g5 is not happening, because after take, queen takes, attacking the king and the bishop at the same time. Okay, of course there is f4 which can be played, but then we are going to capture it. So it's actually, wait a second. Yeah, we're going to capture it. Yes. I wanted to look at into bishop e3, but I think it makes more sense to capture it. And actually rook e3 and bishop e3 are threats. So so that was about bishop g3. So knight f6 has to be tried, queen f6 and bishop g3 now. So the main idea is definitely that bishop takes on e5, and there is going to be a problem on the d7 later. So we have to do something, and we play bishop c5. So of course right now bishop cannot take, I mean it's possible, but we're going to capture the queen. So queen c3 goes away, and And now rook e8 defending the knight, so there are no issues any longer because we're going to capture on the e5 with the pieces, not with a pawn. And our main idea is to push with the b5 and b4, challenging the king and the queen on the queen side. So let's say if white is going with h4, trying to create an attack, we take, bishop takes, and queen a4 check. King goes away, and we have a big problem. I mean, not we, but white has a big problem because after rook takes g1, there is simply queen h4. We're up a piece. So that's why it's not so easy to continue fight here for white. And the position is very, very dominating for black. That was about the queen d4 move. Let's see what happens after knight e5. Queen is coming to the e2. So let's say we're talking about queen d4. If queen d4 is played, we don't go for the d5 move. We play d6. We play more solid kind of. But in this case, we're going for the rook e8. Now we are ready. We are preparing for a d5. We want to go for it because queen is now located on the same file with the rook. So f4 looks like a logical move, trying to, first of all, attacking the piece. Second of all, like, it's looking very nice when the pawns are very close to each other, controlling the key squares in the center. But after knight g6, it appears that actually the pawn is getting weaker and weaker. And after e5, even more weak squares are there. And after d6, there is a problem, huge problem for white, how to defend the pawn on e5. There is no way we're going to capture the pawn on e5. And yeah, it's going to be very difficult to hold it up together. Let's say knight f3 is the only way to defend. We take, and bishop g4, pinning that knight, which was beautifully defending the pawn on e5. And now the e5 is gone for good. Queen f2. First of all, it's spending one more move with the queen, removing it from the file, from the e-file. But it makes sense, right? We don't want to allow as white. White doesn't want to allow the d5 move. So that's why queen is moving. So c6 is played. We're going for it because we want to still go for the d5. g4, white is saying, you can do whatever you want. I want to attack you on the queen side, on the king side. And what have we learned from the principles of the chess is that if someone is attacking you on the king side or the queen side, you have to strike back in the center, and we're striking right away with the d5. Of course, against the flank attack, also there could be another flank attack, but in this particular case, we are striking the center, d5 is played, g5, d4, we're going forward, because in case g takes f6, we're going to take, bishop takes, and queen f6. We have so much better structure and much better development. In case bishop f4, which looks logical, we're playing knight h5, trying to attack the bishop, trying to force it to give it up. In case rook takes on d4, we play queen e7, and position is pretty loose. Many threats in the position. Bishop d5, bishop c5, problems with a pin. Also, there is, the pawns are very active on the king side, but they're not creating too much trouble. Let's not forget about the bishop on the f4, and all other pieces are still standing and waiting for its turn to be played. So let's say bishop e5, white is saying, I'm going to take the piece, I'm going to give up my bishop, rook e5. And f4 looks like white is on the roll, white is just rolling with all the pawns. But this is actually not such a great move, because we are going back with the rook. Again, we have a threat in the picture. There is another threat. The pawn on e4 is weak. Knight comes to the e2, trying to also to attack a pawn on d2. Queen e7. So let's see. If knight d4, bishop takes on c3, pawn takes, queen a3. Big problems because we are attacking big time. King b1. And after rook e4, first of all, we recaptured the pawn back. The pawns are super weak on the queen side. And we are, of course, continuing the attack against the king, while there is not much an attack against the king on the king side. If queen d4, we have bishop g4. And yeah, after some captures, the pawns are going to follow, at least on e4, maybe some others as well. In case of rook d4, there is definitely bishop c5. That's just winning an exchange on the spot, winning exchange, winning material, and we should be happy. So if h4, if not f4, let's say white is trying to keep this pawn defending the pawn on the e4. But let's say h4 happens. Then we move back with a rook. There are also many other moves, but rook e1 looks very nice because rook on e5 can be exposed in some positions to this f4, and we just moved it back, and we are ready for any other move which white is going to play. So queen d4, first move, taking the pawn, trying to win the pawn. We trade, and there is knight g3. And we gave up a pawn, but we're going to win material. So that is not working. Rook d4, queen e7. And, well, even though we just gave up a pawn, let's not forget about bishop c5 threat and our two bishops advantage in the position, a bishop pair, and definitely some attacking opportunities against the king. So yeah, the position is not looking so happy for white, with all the pieces standing on the king side waiting for its turn. So knight g2. In case of knight g2, we play b5. We give up a pawn. We are always happy to give up a pawn for activity. And here queen b6. The problem is that even though white is up a pawn, there are still very weak dark squares. And also we have the bishops, and white's attack is not going forward. Our knight is standing beautifully on h5, blocking all the pawns, and we are ready to continue the march of the pawns on the queen side. So that was about bishop f4. So in case knight goes to e2, which looks logical, there is a beautiful move d3. We are creating another counterattack. Even though our bishop is hanging on b4, we are pushing forward, we are going all in. So let's see what are the opportunities that white has in this position. So if knight coming to c3, back, returning back, we take on c2, king c2, knight e5, e5, bishop f5, king c1. Yeah, like all the pieces are rolling. The king is cut. King cannot get away. Rook c8 is coming. There are big problems with the king. Super weak, super exposed king. And our king is so much safe. And let's not forget about these pieces which are standing in the corner and waiting for something. So if knight goes to g3, then knight fg4. Very beautiful move. Fg, bishop takes, c3, and we sacrifice the piece. We sacrifice the whole piece. We're also ready to sacrifice the bishop because it's not really possible to take it. It's going to open the a file. It looks like we sacrificed too much material, but I'm going to tell you, no, it's not too much because white is playing without these three pieces. So we're actually playing with all our pieces, even though we sacrifice one, we're sacrificing another, but we're dominating, and we're going to definitely checkmate the king. So what happens if g takes f6? So taking that knight on f6, then there is d takes e2, so we're taking the knight back, bishop takes, and queen f6. So the problem definitely here for white is that we again have these ideas of pushing the pawn all the way to a3, creating a super nice attack against the white's king, And well, again, looking at the attack which white managed to achieve, well, there is nothing happening on the king side. Also, there is a weak f4 square, which can be used for our knight. We have a bishop. So we actually didn't even sacrifice the pawn in this position. So definitely very pleasant position to play and attack white. So that was, I believe, everything what we had on the queen c4 move. So now we're going to come to the main line, which is a queen e3. Queen e3 is the typical move, the most common move in this position. And basically, white is not blocking the bishop to be developed. It can, at some moment, go to g3, trying to attack on the queen side, on the king side. And we're continuing our development with knight f6. So it's very logical, definitely. A very popular move. The most popular is a d6 move, but knight f6 is more flexible because we also sometimes don't have to be afraid of the e5 move. Even though d6 is stopping that e5, we don't have to be afraid of it. So in this position, there are quite some moves which white can play. Knight f3, knight c3, e5, bishop d2. So let's start with knight f3. After knight f3, we can go actually bishop e7, we can go bishop b4. Let's look bishop e7 just briefly, because I believe it's a bit more complicated, but we can go for the d5 immediately. So the main idea of this bishop e7 move is that d5 is immediately possible. So if e takes on d5, knight takes, trade happens, we have a nice position. We are ready to finish our development of our final piece, castle short or long. It depends what we want. And great position with a nice edge. In the case of bishop b5, we're castling. White is doubling the pawns, but giving up the bishop for that. So after castle, there are also a couple of different moves, a couple of different options. So in case of rook e8, e5, and here the problem is if knight goes to d7, e6 is there in the picture. So after knight g4, queen f4, f6, queen a4 is a problem attacking the pawn. So that's why in this position it's better to start with the h6. And after rook e1, rook e8, e5, knight e7, e6. Bishop f6 is a very nice move. But this all, of course, is it hasn't happened in the game, so it's very unlikely, but still possible. There is another option. If you don't want to go for bishop 7, you can play bishop b4, because after c3, bishop a5, bishop c4, castle, castle, you can play rook e8 and create another threat of the d5 and go for the d5 later. You can also go with the d6, definitely, but always, if we can, we try to push for the d5 in the position. A very comfortable and pleasant position in this case. So e5 is a main, it's not main move, but it's the main move which we have to know what to do against, because after playing knight f6, we basically invited white to play e5. So we play knight g4, immediately attacking the queen and the pawn on the e5. So queen e2, attacking the knight at the same time, kind of defending, but not defending, but rather keeping the spin on the king. So definitely we cannot take the pawn because of after f4, we're going to lose. So d6, we are first of all defending the knight, and second of all, we are creating an interesting idea. What we are saying here is that white is, we're welcoming white to take on the d6. And that's one of the moves which white has to consider. And in case they play it, we play bishop e6. If pawn takes on c6, queen c7, next move we're going to long castle. We gave up a pawn, but look at all the pieces which are playing in the position of black. We're already having 4 pieces out in the position, while for white, almost all pieces are still on the first rank. If queen goes back to d1, then also the queen will be on the first rank. So That was about this ED6 idea. So in case of F3, where we still cannot take on D5. I mean, we could have made it because it's already better version of taking on E5. But after F4, knight D4, queen E4, queen H4, G3, we sacrifice the piece and we are ready to play bishop D7. We write long castle, bishop coming to C3, F5, trying to push the queen. So we have a big compensation for the piece, but we don't have to sacrifice a piece if we don't want to. So let's just play knight H6, which is a very good, very normal move. Here, of course, we have to be ready for bishop H6, but we have a beautiful little move which is saving our problems. We are not going to have the weak pawns. We're not going to have the double pawns on the F12 because after queen H4, we're just taking the bishop with a queen. And after bishop E6 in this position, yeah, kind of D7 is one of the only moves trying to spoil us. Trying to spoil not us, but the position. King D7, bishop, queen D2, we're trading the queens. And after rook E8, we're having very comfortable endgame. We're clearly better in this position and due to the development and everything. So nice position. So in case of H3 attacking the knight, then we can already take, because the problem is that after F4, their pawn on G3 is not going to be placed any longer due to the problem that this pawn is on H3 is weakening the G3 square. So knight E4, queen E4, and C5. So there are already the threats in the position. What happens in case of knight A3, defending the pawn on C2? We have queen H4, king D1, bishop E7. So the take is not happening because of the pin on the queen. So G3 has to be played, but now queen F6, very cute little move, pinning the bishop. So in case pawn takes, we're going to take the bishop. So C3 is being played, but here knight E6. And in the next move, we are ready already to remove the knight from the E5 square. This very nice position. Materially, we are up a pawn. Positionally, we're much better. So winning position. All right. So in case F takes E5, let's say white is taking a material, taking a piece, but then white has to handle the very nice moves. Okay, it feels like bishop f5 is super tempting, but it would be a losing mistake because after bishop b5, the problem is we cannot do anything in this position. And after queen e7, there is queen b7, and we're losing here. So we should be really careful, and we should play d5. Very important, blocking the diagonal, where potentially white can win the game with this queen b7 move. So now queen f4, queen is moving away. Now the c2 is actually hanging. After knight takes c2, king d1, knight a1. We're already up material in this position. King is also pretty weak piece, and well, we kind of can say that position is winning for black. That was about the queen e2 move. Queen e4 also looks pretty logical. It's more common move than queen e2, definitely, because it's not blocking the bishop. But it also has some pros and cons in the position. So in this case, we can already instantly go for take on e5. d5, looking at d5, looks like it's possible because we're going to have similar positions like we discussed earlier. It's definitely a possible move. After e takes d6, bishop e6, similar idea like we had in the previous line. Bishop a6 is unfortunately a super strong move, and due to this move, this is actually not working. But it would be so nice to play d5. We always like to play d5. So knight g takes on e5. That's the correct way to react. And f4, well, earlier we were saying, all right, white is winning a piece. We cannot really go for it. But after d5, okay, queen has to stay somewhere on the e file. There are two ways, of course, e2 or e3. or e3 or e2. So in case of e3, there is a d4. We're rushing with a pawn. We are attacking the queen. So if queen goes back to e4, then queen h4 check, and after g3, queen g4. So now bishop h3, we're returning back with a queen and attacking it. So now, of course, if queen is taking on g6, the knight is recapturing. Sorry, like this. So that's why, of course, queen e2 has to be played. Bishop h3, knight takes, and queen g4, double attack. Very important line, definitely. Very, very important, because in this way, we're saving a piece. And actually, we're also keeping an extra pawn. So that's a good idea. So queen e2, another option. Then we're going for bishop b4. Check. It's a novelty, actually, already. But definitely, it's not really a shocking move or something very special. The problem is here that white cannot really block the bishop check. Let's see what is going to happen if white is actually blocking. So if knight goes to d2, there is bishop g4, knight gf3, we take the knight. After queen h4, king d1. Queen f4, we're recapturing the pawn, which was actually attacking the knight, and there are no more problems. We are completely winning. If c3 is being played, it's fading to bishop g4, attacking the queen. Now, big question, where to move the queen? After queen to d2, there is queen e7. And we're sacrificing a piece here, but the problem is after dc, knight e3, rook d8, there is going to be a big problem since the rook d1 is coming. It looks like white is going to be get mated or losing a lot of material in this position. Even though we're down a piece, we are attacking like crazy and winning this game. So that's why king d1 is a forced move in this position. You cannot really block with any piece the check. So we are castling, we're giving up a piece due to the fact that, of course, the king is, first of all, cannot castle any longer. It's a weak piece, it's in the center. All the pieces are standing, almost all the pieces are standing on the back rank. We have already active pieces in the position. Rook e8 is coming next. And we can say in this position, there is definitely a compensation for a piece, but also huge initiative, huge play. Definitely, we have to be very dynamic in this position. We're going to recapture pawn on the d5, and let's see an example of the line which can continue. After bishop f4, d3. So ideas after cd, queen d4, attacking the bishop, attacking the pawn. Bishop already pointed out, bishop g4 is a very strong move. And in case queen takes on d3, then we have queen f6, super nice move. It's brilliant move, because after pawn takes, rook checkmating the king. And other than that, it's actually attack of the bishop and also potentially on this bishop, creating another attack of rook coming to d8 and winning the queen. So yeah, very beautiful move, very, very nice one. And of course, we can also take on d5, on e5, and we should probably take on e5 first and then rook d8. All right, that was it was about the queen e3 move. We're discussing there's also queen e2 move. Going a bit closer to the king. So bishop b4 in this case, the problem here is that we also want to for white's king to move, because there are some interesting lines in case white is blocking the check. Let's say c3 is being played, then we have bishop g4. We're bringing the final piece in the game. We're ready to castle. We're ready to sacrifice the pieces before. Knight f3, short castle. Also, here, let's not forget two pieces of hanging. If white is taking the bishop, we're taking the knight on f3, pawn takes, knight d4. We have too many tempos. we're having knight f3 in the position. We have queen h4 check. We have rook e8, rook d8. I mean, we have so much power to attack the king that we don't need that piece. What happens if white is taking the knight on e5? Well, then we're capturing, and we don't worry about the bishop on the c5, on the b4. So in case white is very greedy and taking the bishop as well, there is rook e8 with many threats in the picture, and we're down 2 pawns, but we are winning this position. Let's say bishop e3 trying to stop, but then after d4, the problem is that this knight cannot capture it because it's pinned, and this bishop also cannot really capture it because after that, then there is going to be some nasty knight f3 discover checks and winning ideas for black. White cannot really hold this position much longer. Bishop d2 is another try to stop the check. But after bishop d2, we're again going for this bishop g4 idea. Queen e3, castle, and after f takes e5, rook e8. Next move, rook e5 is going to come. There is going to be a big problem. Again, we're down a piece, but position is completely winning. Okay, in this case, completely winning. In some cases, maybe there is still some play because white cannot really solve too many problems at once. So king d1 looks like the most logical move in the position because king is not anymore on this e file. So castle is happening. We are again giving up a piece. Actually very sharp lines in this chapter. So far, we're giving up pieces, we're giving up material, pawns, and we're trying to show that the material advantage and the development advantage in the development and activity of the pieces are two completely different things, and also safety of the king. Let's not forget about it. So f takes e5, rook e8, bishop f4, and f6 breaking, trying to win the pawn, and next move having the strong center. Clearly better in this position. We can say, okay, compensation, but definitely a big initiative for black here. We want to take on the e5. We want to create some pins. King is still in the center. There are many problems to solve for white. And we are definitely just in the dominating role in this position. Bishop d2, trying to stop the idea. So that was actually, we were just looking at this e5 and why it doesn't really working. So bishop d2 is interesting way how white is trying to stop the bishop before move, and now kind of introducing the idea of e5 in the position. But now we're going with bishop e7 because right now we introduce the move of d5 in the position since there is no longer the check. Also, in case of e5, it's not going to work due to the knight g4 and immediate take on the e5. So it's not really all working, what was working earlier. Knight f3, well, developing move, but if we can play d5, let's play it. After e5, knight e4. Knight is a very nice piece here on e4. Bishop b5, bishop c5. Knight d4 and queen h4. Well, there are many threats. There are many ideas. The pawn on f2 is also weakness. So yeah, definitely clearly better position right now for black. Over here, we are ready to finish the development. Castle, short or long side, depends what we want. In case of c4, I mean, c4 is a pretty ambitious move. The problem of c4 is that it's very risky. On one hand, what white wants to do, white is stopping the d5 with all means. But on the other hand, well, it's first of all a weakening move. It's move with another pawn while we are almost finished the development. White is still far behind. So that's why we continue what we started. We just castle. We just finish our development. Knight c3, knight b4. We're acting very quickly and we have to do it. We have to do it super quickly. Knight fc2, family fork is a huge threat right now. If rook c1, it's pretty slow defense because after knight g4, another knight is jumping in. Black is continuing to be very dynamic, to play very aggressively. Queen f3. Now we're going for f5, defending the knight, and we're bringing another piece into the game, the rook. E takes f5, knight d5. We're not doing anything else but attacking. Knight e5, queen e5. And now bishop c5. You cannot take, and you never want to take on e5. Now our idea is to play not with a red, but with a green. We want to play d6, we want to play rook e8. We can also take the pawn on f5. So many moves, many ideas. We are definitely in the driver's seat in this position. So let's say long castle is happening. Again, long castle is not so bad, but the problem is that there are already some weakening moves which have been played. And we still want to try and go for the d5 in the next move. The problem right now for white is that even though c5 is kind of stopping the d5 idea, it weakens the position of the king a lot. In case of a3, already in such positions, after a3 move, we can already almost pre-move the move a5. We are happy to give up a piece. As you understood previously, we already had so many positions where we give a lot of material for the advantage, for the not for the advantage, for the development advantage, for the activity of the pieces. So here we are also happy to give up a piece to bring another piece to the game. The rook is coming in. So e5, we're just going forward, knight g4, queen g3, trying to bring the queen to attack on the queen-king side. But now d5 is a move, defending the knight at the same time, also breaking with the d5 move. Knight f3, trying to finish the development, bishop c5, a3. Again, a3, a5. It's very typical. It's very typical. We're just going for it. And bishop g5, we're just taking on f2. And after the trade of the queens, it looks like we are losing a piece. But even this position, which is actually very instructive for us to understand, even after trade of the queens, even though we're down a piece, the position is lost for white. This is just lost position. I mean, let's look at this following way. So first of all, we most likely will also have win another pawn. So we already have like 2 pawns. 3 pawns for a piece. We're going to win another pawn. There is so much active pieces. We have rook a1, we have bishop f5. Super active position, and definitely winning for us. c4, that was c4. So knight c3 is the main move. It's more solid. Still trying to stop the d5 idea, but not so actively as a c4. And here actually the case where we can go for d5. Because our bishop is already blocking the e file. There are no checks, no discovered checks in this case. So let's see what happens if typical reaction of e5 is happening. Well, the huge problem is d4, and white is losing a piece. So we just won a piece, and there is nothing about it. So it's not possible to push for e5. White has to take on d5 in this position. Just simplifying, maybe white doesn't want it, but white has to go for it. And after taking on d5, there is a choice definitely to move the queen or to trade the knight. Let's say queen goes away to g3, very logical, targeting the g7 square. Here, knight cb4 is the move. The problem for white is that after queen g7, bishop f6 is attacking the queen, and also in the next move we want to play knight c2, winning material. After long castle, we are taking on c3, bc, and knight a2. So why bishop takes c3 is not possible is that after this, we are just checkmating. Oh, okay, actually, we're not checkmating, but we're winning material. Sorry, that's why we have to start probably knight c3. Sorry, yes, knight c3, it's more precise. So, and after take, I don't know with which piece you're taking, everything is falling. Anyway, so Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So that's why b takes c3 has to be played, knight a2, king b2, and knight c3. Very beautiful move, sacrificing a knight. So let's say bishop takes on c3 is clearly not possible because queen d1. So what happens after what happens after queen c3? We have bishop f6 and we're winning queen. What happens after king c3? Then bishop f6 again is played. After king b3, bishop e6, introducing another bishop. Very, very beautiful position. c4, queen d7, we want to play queen b5. We want to attack the king. We want just to checkmate, and we're going to checkmate the king very soon. So it's very difficult to see how white is surviving this. White is not surviving. Well, all the pieces are just waiting. So bishop d3 is another move, not castling. It's not really challenging move in this position, so there is already, we can see already that how slow it is, because after castle, knight g2, we take the bishop, queen takes, knight b4, and after trade and going into the endgame, bishop f5 is beautifully targeting the c2 square, the c2 pawn and c2 square, and it's not easy and not even possible to defend it, so we're winning a pawn. And most likely we should convert the endgame. Bishop d3, we're looking at bishop b5, checking the king, looks also very logical, but after c6, bishop a4, castle, we're just continuing the development. Bishop d6 with a tempo, actually super important, knight c3, bc, and knight d5. And well, the position looks great. There are weaknesses for white. We have two bishops. White also has two bishops, but our position is much healthier, much better pawn structure, and better activity of the pieces. So that's why we are having a clear edge here. Knight d5. What happens if knight is taking on d5? We take with the queen, but it's a bit one move too late, right? You should take on d5 immediately with the queen, if it's a knight, if you want. So in case queen g7, you may say, all right, there is no bishop f6 any longer in this position, but there is knight c2. Check, king d1, knight takes, and if you are taking on h8 as white, we have bishop f8. In the next move, we're going to develop the bishop. We're going to continue with the long castle, finish the development, and white is having huge problems. There is no development, there is no safety of the king. White is just lost. So if bishop f4, queen e4 check, it's super precise, because the problem is after bishop b4 check, c3 can be played with a tempo, and bishop has to move. Not take, but to move. So after queen e4 check, knight e2 we take, and after, in case of c3, we are taking on b2. So in this position, queen c3. Now we play queen b6. And the problem now, after queen g7, there is bishop f6 already there. So we are threatening bishop f4, bishop f6. There is a problem on f2 as well. So it's not really a good position for white as well. So that was about queen g3, and obviously very logical would be to play bishop knight takes d5. Sorry, it's a best move, and okay, again, it's not so easy to play this move. If you're playing white, you want to achieve something, and this move is basically saying I want to go for equality. I don't want to fight for anything. So knight takes d5, queen d5. First problem for white, they cannot castle because there is a problem on a2. Second problem is developing of the bishop is a bit difficult due to the problem on g2. Well, again, we have better advantage, we have better position. In case of knight f3, you play bishop f5, attacking the pawn on the c2. We finish the development, we're attacking the pawn, we are ready to castle, long or short, we will decide it later. And well, the white still has to defend the pawn on c2 and castle somewhere finally. If knight e2, which looks a little bit more logical. Knight it wants to get to the c3 square, which is very nice in the position. First of all, it's going to attack the queen, and second of all, defend the pawn on a2 in case white wants long castle. So bishop f5, we're attacking the pawn on c2, again, developing with the tempo. Knight f4 is possible, and also knight c3. We're going to look at knight f4 first. Knight f4 attacking the queen. Queen goes back to the d7, long castle. We're also castling long, bishop d3, and after rook h8, we have a pretty much equal position, right? We can say there is not much for white and for black, but definitely black is better in this position due to the activity of the pieces. We already have both rooks on the open files. We have threads in the position, and white has to be really careful because there could be a move like bishop g5 or any bishop move away. It's white who has to fight for equality in this particular, can we say middle game, end game, something like this, because it's not really a middle game, but it's not yet an end game, so it's very tough to describe this position. But I would say that white is the one who is trying to fight for equal position. So that was about knight f4. Knight c3 looks more logical, definitely attacking the queen and defending the pawn on a2 at the same time. But queen d4. And this is very interesting that in this position, even moving away the queen or putting queen somewhere else is not really a big problem. But this is actually, I like the most, because in this case, white cannot really trade. The problem is that after trade, the knight is coming to the d4. And after that, there's going to be starting problems with the c2 square. So after long castle, we also play long castle. Now, if white is trading on d4, there's going to be knight d4 attacking the pawn on c2. And if not, then there is a knight b4 threat. And it's very tough to defend the positions. It's equal objectively, but it's very difficult for white to hold this. All right. Bishop d2, we discussed fully, so now we go to the main move, knight c3. After knight c3, we go for the bishop b4. We went for this move many times when there is a knight on c3. Main idea of this move definitely is that we still want to go for the d5 move. Potentially, we are fighting for some e4 pawn. And of course, we want to finish the development and yeah, and push for d5. Push d5, finish the development. So bishop d2 looks very logical, blocking the pin, ready for long castle. We castle short, long castle. All super logical moves, finishing the development. And here we go for the rook e8. Of course, we can also play something like d6. But again, why to slow down if we can try to create more threats in the position? Rook e8, first of all, attacking the e4 pawn. Potentially, there could be a ways to take on c3 and take on e4. We are pinning the queen, introducing d5 in the position. So we're already creating so many threats. What should white do? White should do something about the queen, right? There are a few moves. There are a couple of moves with the queen, and there are some other moves which white can play. There is f3 in the position. There is bishop c4, bishop queen f3, and well, that's it, I believe. What else? Sorry, queen g3. I meant queen g3 and queen f4 also. Sorry, queen f4 is also possible. Okay, let's start with the kind of the worst move, which is f3. f3 is actually asking for trouble. It's defending e4, that's true. But after f3, I mean, how could you not play d5? And that's what we are doing. The challenge is accepted. We're going for it. Queen g5, moving away from the pin and also creating some threats in the position. h6, we're asking the queen where does it want to go. Queen is coming to the g3 square, bishop d6 attacking the pawn, and at the same time, there is no more, or rather another side, I would say, not this one. We are blocking the x-ray and we are threatening to take in the next move. So after queen goes away to f2, takes, we're winning a pawn. And well, this is like just a pawn up position for black, and there is not much. I mean, definitely white wants to attack on the king side, black wants to attack on the queen side, but there is not much happening right now. There is no compensation for the pawn. Queen h4. What happens if queen goes not to g3 but to h4? We have a d4. We're gaining a huge amount of space in the center. So that's another way how we can use this d5 push. We can either win a pawn or try to trade the pawn on e4, or we can create more advantage to create an attack on the queen side. So knight c2, a5, we're ready to launch an attack. All problem for white is that all pieces are located on the king side, and we are ready for an attack on the queen side. Definitely very pleasant position to play. Huge initiative for black right now, and we are even equal with material. We didn't sacrifice anything. Queen f2. Another queen move. Queen goes away. So here it would be nice to play the d4, but the problem after d4 there is knight d5, attacking the bishop, attacking the pawn, and it's a bit problematic. But definitely interesting idea. But taking on e4 is, it's real test for white because we are winning a pawn. So knight e4. Let's start with knight e4, then we're going to go with a pawn takes e4. Knight e4, pawn takes, and bishop g4, attacking the rook. Knight f3, queen f6. And in this way, we created the position where there is isolated king's pawn. We are not yet taking it. I mean, we had this x-ray, that's why we couldn't yet take the pawn, but the problem for white is definitely to defend it. It's very difficult to defend the pawn. It's going to be tough to fight. So that's why we have a very pleasant position where we can constantly create more and more pressure on the pawn on e4. If bishop g5, which looks very logical because it's first of all attacking the queen, then it's creating a pin. So here we have to do something. And the problem for black is that there are some issues. Let's say if bishop d6 is being played, okay, it's already feels a little bit like a logical move, moving the bishop back on d6. There is a queen h4, creating even more problems, creating even more, even stronger pin. So in case of queen e7, it's again another problem because after knight d5, using the pin, queen e5, doubling the pawns for black, f e4 is played. Big problem. There is a disaster position. We are lost already. So that's why it's very important to remember the move in this position, which is bishop d7. And it's very unusual move and not very obvious. What do we want to do after bishop f6? It's actually a huge question. What do you do after bishop f6? So let's start with that move. There is obviously also knight d5 here. We'll look at it later. So bishop f6. If you take with a pawn, well, you doubled your pawns, but we are not taking with a pawn. That's a spoiler. We're taking with a queen. We're giving up a rook. We're giving up a piece, the bishop on d7, because after bishop c3, bc, and here taking on c3 is also not so bad. We can take it and we can create attack, but e3. Look at this move. This move is like this pawn is like a nail in the position, not in the coffin, but in the position, because it's separating the position on two sides, the king's and the queen side. And as we can see, looking at the king side of white, it's not working. It's actually main problem of white. Most times in this chapter, we're looking at the pieces and they're standing the same there on the king side, parting with themselves. So after queen d1, then we play queen e6 with a double attack. If rook moves away, we're going to win back material. We won back a piece, and we're even up a pawn. King is in the center, crushing position. We are winning. So that's why this is not working. So knight d5 has to be tried, attacking the knight on f6. What to do? Well, once again, we have this e3 move, which is very nice. Queen h4, creating even more pressure. But here we start with a beautiful bishop d2, check. King has to go away. Bishop f5. We're not caring about f6 knight at all. So knight f6 looks logical. Pawn takes, queen f6. And it looks like we are in a huge trouble for a moment. It looks like there is queen g5, queen h6 checkmate threat, but we have a beautiful queen d6. Queen d6 move, and the problem is for white, definitely okay, queen g5 is not possible. I mean, it's not going to be a checkmate because of bishop coming to g6, and if queen h6, we have queen f8. That's the only move which is defending the position, but we are also winning. So that was f3 move. We looked at it. So queen f4, removing the queen from the x-ray on the rook. We cannot yet push the d5 in this position, so we have to take on c3, bishop takes c3, and we're taking a pawn with a rook. Knight c4 is also possible, but the problem is after knight c4 there is a bishop c4 move. Knight e4 is possible, but after knight e4 there is bishop c4 attacking the pawn, and after, let's say, rook e7. After rook e7, there is bishop f7, and if we take, so white is winning back the pawn. So rook e4 is definitely more precise. Queen can go to d2, queen can also go to g3. Let's say first, if queen goes to the queen side, we go for the b5. That's all we wanted all the way. Bishop f6, queen f6, queen d5, winning back the pawn. But even though we gave back the pawn, we are, looking at the position, looking at the activity of the pieces, the bishop, rook, queen, the rook which is coming to d8, we are completely winning. So if knight e2, rook e6, so here knight f4 attacking the rook. Actually, this rook e6 is very nice move. It's a very topical idea. Going back, and then we first of all we defend on f6, and second of course we have ideas of playing rook d6, defending on d5. So yeah, and the problem is, yeah, it feels like white can take the pawn, but after queen d8, it's definitely so much better position for black. If f3 is being played, trying to take care of the square of e4, there is no knight jump possible. Rook d6 again is there. Knight d4. We trade the pieces and b6. We are ready to rush with all the pawns. Up a pawn, very comfortable position. White has two bishops, but still it's very pleasant to play it, and we're going to create an attack on the king, on the queen side very soon. So queen g3, trying to keep the queen on the side where white wants to attack the king. On the king side, it's a whole idea to put more pressure on the king. But after d5, again, our main idea is to play rook e6, rook d6, and to push the d4 pawn to close the bishop. So f3, again attacking the rook e6, rook wants to go there, knight e2, rook is already on d6, queen f4, if queen f4, d4, we are, first of all, very happy to give back the pawn because we have the knight d5 move. We push the pawn, and after that, the knight is coming. Knight c6, pawn takes, and well, we're going to take the bishop on c3. We have a very pleasant advantage, very pleasant position. Also open the b file for the attack against the king. This game this position was actually played in 2017 with black pieces. Anand was playing, and he won the game against Nepomniachtchi, converting this very pleasant advantage. So knight d4, let's see what happens to that. Then we are trading bishop f5. If queen goes away, then bishop goes to g6. So why did actually queen go away? To push the pawns, right? It looks very logical. So g4, c5, sacrificing a pawn, giving back the pawn, but on the other hand, opening the c file. Rook c6, bishop d6, trying to stop that, but well, unfortunately, queen a5 attacking both the bishop and the pawn a2. Bishop going to a3 was the only move. Rook c8, putting even more pressure. And, well, this position looks like super dominating. Even though there is a bishop against the knight, the bishop is super awkward piece on a3. We're having a huge attack on the queen side. So that's very tough for white to play against. h4, what happens if pawn h is being marshed? Then we are going with the queen d7. We are already creating ideas. First of all, to bring the other rook to the game, and secondly, we want to place queen to a5, a4, attacking the pawn on c2, checkmate threat, and also pawn on a2. So queen f2, trying to defend the c2 square. So h5 right now. Now we are stopping the ideas of playing of the h5, h6. And basically in this position, we can say that white is not really having compensation for the pawn, and black is clearly better. That was about the queen f4 move. We already discussed f3 here, queen f4. What happens in case of bishop c4? We're going to look next. So the bishop c4 looks logical. First of all, developing the bishop. Second, looking at some squares on c7. And thirdly, it's stopping the d5 idea. So the problem here is we cannot really play for d5. And that's why we have to do something. And we go for the d6. Also, looking at this line, we can see that bishop takes on c3, bishop takes on c3, let's say knight takes on e4 is possible, but the only problem is here after queen f4, we're going to transpose to the same position we had before, and white is going to win back the pawn. So it doesn't really make too much sense to trade all these pieces. That's why we go with the d6. It's a bit more, it's modest move and looking at the first sight, but it's actually very ambitious. Why is it ambitious? Because we didn't trade all these pieces like I just showed in the previous line, but we are keeping the pieces, we're keeping the pressure on the e4. At some moment, we can be ready to push for the d5. So let's see what is going to happen next for in the position. Let's say knight f3 is being played. Here we can, again, we can look at the bishop c3 line, but the best move is, of course, bishop e6, developing that piece. So bishop c3, we're winning a pawn. Rook e1, immediately creating the threat. Rook e8, rook e7 is going to be met with a very nice move, knight e5. And after bishop f5, queen f4, attacking the bishop. And basically, in this case, we can see that there is compensation for the pawn for white. So it's better to play bishop e6. We shouldn't take the pawn. We shouldn't rush into taking the material. We should just try to improve our position. Of course, in case it's very difficult to punish taking the pawn, then we can take it. So bishop e6, we trade the best piece for of white is a bishop on c4. Bishop e6, rook e6, knight g5, very logically attacking and defending at the same time. Rook e8 coming all the way back. But now h6 is a huge threat. It is coming, and now we actually can take the pawn on e4. So question, what to do here for us white? White can try to play something like f4. It's saying that white's knight is not going to be moved from the g5, because after h6, white will play h4, sacrificing a piece. And we don't really take that piece because we don't want to open that crazy file for the rook from h1. So we play queen c8 in this position. And the problem is that right now, of course, we cannot really take the knight on g5, but maybe later we can. And yeah, we want to play for the d5, d4. Now it's already a threat due to this very, very unpleasant X-ray. And I mean, definitely it's a clearly better position for black in this case. Even though knight is standing on g5, there are no threats in the position yet, and we will be ready at any moment to take that knight. Or in case of a3, bishop, if bishop takes 3, bishop takes 3, h6, h4 is the problem. So we are not winning a pawn. But that's why we have to play bishop a5. Just we go bishop back. So in case of a3, it's just very important to know that we just move the bishop back. We have ideas of pushing the pawn all the way to b4. So on this very famously known hook, when the pawn and the knight are standing like this, we can go for the b5, b4, the hook. So f3. F3 move is protecting the pawn on the e4. Looks very logical. Looks pretty nice move. We go for knight e5, targeting the c4 square, where we are ready to attack 2 pieces and get the bishop. So queen e2 is stopping the knight coming to c4, and now h6. So now question is, what happens in case of h4? In this case, already knight h5 is the move, because here we are going to follow with bishop takes 3, and then we can already take the knight on the g5, because then there's going to be a problem with the king. There's going to be a check on the b5 at the end of the line. Okay, of course, sorry, just to mention quickly is, of course, in case of bishop c3 and pawn takes on c3, definitely we are not taking on g5, but just to let you know. But of course, if white is taking with a pawn, then it's opening the b file, which is not very good for black. So knight h3, going back, c6. So first, we're introducing ideas of d5, ideas of b5, to also create an outpost of the knight on c4 square. X-ray in the position is also there. So knight f4, a4, oh, sorry, a5. And now, of course, in this position, in case anytime there is a3, we are ready to give up the bishop. Well, we are again ready to play for something like b5 or d5. It's just going to depend on the position. So h4, trying to attack. White has to attack on the king side. And d5, against flank attack, we're striking in the center. E takes d5, c takes d5, and now we have threats like knight c4, d4, they're in the position. All right, that was all about the knight f3 move. And now we're coming to the move f3. It's very common, the most common move in the position, but it's very slow, because the problem is that in just very dynamically, very quickly, black can create an attack. And that's why we're starting with knight e5. Knight e5 attacking the bishop, gaining a tempo. Bishop has to go back. Bishop also keeping this diagonal, just looking for the pawn on f7. And now a5. Now we are ready to push with the b5, a4, already there in the picture, and white has to be ready to face them. What happens in case of a4? Okay, white is trying to physically stop the a4 idea for black. But here we go with c6, and now we are ready to break with a b5. King b1, b5, a4 immediately. Black is attacking. Black's attack is super dangerous right now. Even though we're sacrificing a pawn, we're opening files against the king. And that's where we're going to finish the game. The position, of course, we cannot say it's completely crushing for black, but there is a big initiative. There is a huge attack ongoing, which we're going to, we're just going to continue. We're going to follow up with this attack. a3, attacking the bishop at the same time, like making a space for the bishop all the way on a2. So question, what to do here? Okay, we not going to trade the bishop on c3. We go back with the bishop on the c5, attacking the queen. Queen has to go move somewhere. Let's say queen g5, being very aggressive. But the problem is that actually it's not a good square for a queen, because after c6, knight g2, we are moving forward, bishop f4, queen b6. The problem is that this queen is actually standing in the way of its own pieces, because the pawns have to be on g5, h5, but not the queen. Queen is standing in the way. There is no threat in the position. And we are the ones who are creating an attack on the queen side. In the next move, the b4 is there. We are going just to break a position, completely winning position for black, also according to computer. Queen e2, queen goes back, c6. We're introducing the idea of the b5, b4 again. And, well, it's very difficult to stop it, and it's very slow. The attack on the queen-king side is super slow, so we're definitely the first one to strike. Queen e1, going all the way back. And now we actually don't even wait with the move c6. We play b5 instantly. We sacrifice the pawn, knight takes b4, pawn goes to a4, bishop a2, and c6. The next move, we're going to bring the queen to b6. So let's say knight goes back. I mean, it's logical, knight returns. And okay, we cannot yet play rook b8 because of the problem on the pawn on a4, but after queen b6, bishop f4, and d5, we want to play d4, challenging the knight, and then the next move we're going to bring the rook to b8. We have an x-ray against the queen. We have a huge pressure on the b2 pawn. We gave up a pawn, but we're creating a super attack against the king, which might be very dangerous for white. Okay, so that was about the bishop f4 move. Sorry, bishop c4. And now we're going to look at the move of queen g3. We're already discussing it's the main line. It's the most challenging move because queen g3 is immediately white is placing the queen against the king and already creating some threats in the position, already creating some attack. So what should we do? We're accepting. Actually, yes, I forgot to tell that even though queen g3 is attacking, queen g3 is giving up a pawn on e4. And in this line, we are just going to accept it. Definitely, there is also rook takes e4 alternative move, because after knight takes, attacking bishop and queen at the same time. So very interesting continuation, but definitely the game is continuing in completely different direction and a very, very sharp position. So we're opting out for the knight e4 option, knight e4, rook e4, and well, here there are a few moves which white can play. The question is what's happening after bishop g5, attacking the queen? Well, we go back with the bishop. We're ready to trade. In case of h4, we don't take the bishop, obviously. We don't want to allow white to open the h file. So after d5, f3, rook a4, king b1, bishop f5. We're developed all our pieces. So a couple of pieces are still standing there, but they are ready to be developed in the next moves, while white's pieces are still waiting. And definitely we have a huge attack. We have knight before, later we can play, we can introduce the queen also to the position. So yeah, definitely a great attacking ideas. So what happens if bishop takes before? We take with the rook. So now there is no problem there are no problems on the dark squares. Originally, we wouldn't really go with a rook somewhere on b4 due to the dark squared bishop, but now since the bishops have been traded, the rook is going to be very comfortable there. But now actually after a3, rook goes back all the way to e8, and knight f3 is played. So white is trying to finish the development. We are still up a pawn. d6, we're finishing development by bringing out the last piece. Queen f6, offering a trade and saying that let's go to this endgame where we're slightly better. Black is slightly better due to the extra pawn advantage. Even if white is taking the queen, doubling the pawns, we're still up a pawn and definitely comfortable position for black. Bishop f4. So first of all, attacking the pawn on c7. Very logical. So since white is giving up a pawn, now maybe it's time to get back the pawn. And the problem here is that there is one move which we must play. If we play d6, this is a very greedy move. We are being very materialistic. We are stopping the idea of taking on c7. But after bishop d3, rook e8, knight f3, Looking at this position, looking at the pieces which are being developed for white, we can already see there is a huge compensation for a pawn and big initiative, big attack, which is about to happen on our king, where actually there are not a single piece is defending it. So that's why d6, we're not playing, we're not materialistic. We took a pawn, that's true, but we're not materialistic because here we play queen f6. We allow bishop to take the pawn on c7 without the tempo, which is very important. So we didn't allow bishop c7 with taking and attacking the queen, but without tempo. And the big problem why we did it is that because after bishop c7, there is a very nice move. I actually would like you to stop the video and try to find this move for black. So I hope you found the move. It is actually d6 because the bishop is being trapped on c7 square. First of all, you might say, what are you talking about? The d6 pawn is hanging. Well, that's true. Okay, first of all, let's see if knight coming to e2, there is bishop f5, and then the next move, we're just going to capture the bishop. But after bishop d6, queen h6, check, king goes away, and bishop d6. And the problem is the back rank checkmate, which is going to happen. Whatever piece takes on d6, we're going to capture with a queen, and back rank checkmate is already in the position. So knight h3 has to be played. Now we can play already d6 because it's already different story. So after bishop d3, the problem after coming back with the e8 rook, bishop g5, again, it allows more complications and it allows white to have more active pieces than we do. So that's, of course, definitely a compensation for a pawn. So that's why we play knight d4. We allow white to take the rook. But, of course, there is a big problem. After taking the rook, white is losing a queen. So not going to happen. So in case of bishop g5, there is queen e6. Again, the same problem. There is no bishop takes d4. Also, the problem on a2, the pawn on a2 is hanging. Queen rook g4 is a threat. And king b1. Let's try to see. Sorry, yeah, bishop b4. We were discussing it, right? So king b1. If king b1 is being played, then they play knight e2, attacking the queen. So after bishop takes, rook takes, we have a very dominating position. We're already winning, we can say. Yeah, big problems for white, and rook is invincible on e2. Queen f3, double attack. Looks like a double attack. But the problem here is very nice, very beautiful move, bishop a3, creating a checkmate threat. What to do? In case of c3, we're happy to sacrifice a piece, and it's going to be a checkmate. In case after knight c3, piece is not being taken, but king c2 is played, we have rook b4, taking our bishop on a very beautiful, actually, line. A rook b2, sacrificing a whole rook. King c1, knight a2, checkmate, not possible, so king has to take. Knight a4. If any other move with a king, it's a checkmate, so king b3 has to be tried. But in a couple of moves, it's going to be a checkmate, very beautiful line. B takes a3. Let's say white is taking a bishop on a3. We go knight c3, checking the king, attacking the rook, so there is a fork. King c1, and now knight a2. We don't even take the rook, because after king d2 here, king cannot escape. It's a checkmate on c3. So king b1. King b1. Actually, I forgot to mention, and it's very, I think, important. Bishop a3 was actually played, and it's very, very unpleasant surprise. It was played by a grandmaster from Spain, Vallejo Pons. In one of the games, he was actually playing it against this position took place in the game between Vallejo Pons with black pieces against Nepomniachtchi. And here after knight c3, knight a2, taking one more pawn. So king d2, again, the problem is queen c3 checkmate. king b1, knight c3 again, and now bishop h3, sacrificing, but after bishop takes g2, queen f4. In the end of this position, actually looking at the material, materially, black is already much better. And this was a game which was played by Vallejo Pons against Nepomniachtchi in 2007, and basically knight and 3 pawns for rook, decisive material advantage, and also the problems with the safety of the king is definitely disturbing. So bishop c1, trying to defend, trying to be very solid, trying to neutralize all the attack. But the problem is after queen f3, gf, and rook goes back, we're suddenly arising into the winning endgame. So after bishop e2, we take a knight on h3. Bishop is being taken, we take the bishop. And even though white is trying to trap the rook, so to say, on e2, after bishop g2, rook g1, and bishop takes f3, it's a winning position. We are up 2 pawns already here, and definitely it's going to be easy not to lose the rook on e2. Also, there's bishop e4. I mean, we're not going to lose the pawn, definitely. And after knight g5, knight c1, trading a couple of pieces, bishop h7, king f8. And also very important, and king f8 also with a g6 threat. If bishop goes back, definitely the f2 pawn is falling. And in case of rook c8, very important actually, that in this position, we're playing rook e1, and bishop d7. Due to the back rank issues of the whites, rook e8 is possible. If rook takes d7, it's a checkmate, so that's very, very important. And after rook e8, trading the pieces, we are up 1 pawn, but there are also issues for white on the king side. Pawns are super weak. So that was basically the about the bishop f4 move. So let's see what happens after c3. c3 looks logical. First of all, also it's blocking this diagonal potentially. There are no more issues with the queen f6, but it's creating some other potential problems later in the game. So we go back with the bishop. Looking at the position, feels like bishop f8 is the most logical move, which is true. It looks very natural to place bishop on f8, but very precise is to play bishop e7. First of all, what does it move doing? We're stopping the h4 ideas. It's not possible because we're going to take it. Second of all, we want to play also with bishop h4 sometimes, because after playing bishop h4, we're going to attack the queen, and because g3 square is the ideal square for a queen, we want to ask it to go away from it. We don't want to tolerate the queen on g3. So f4, one of the moves. This move is weakening light squares a lot, but it's still a move. It was played, so we have to look at it. So d5 in this position, and here bishop d3, very logically attacking the rook. I would like you to stop video for a moment and try to find the best move for black in this position. I hope you found the move. It is actually, I mean, we are talking about whole, this concept of material, of sacrificing the pieces, whole chapter, and we're sacrificing a lot, and it's not an exception here because we sacrifice with bishop f5. After taking on e4, bishop is going to be a real beast, also due to all these weak light squares. So knight f3 is being played, not taking yet the rook, queen d7. Let's say bishop takes, rook he1. You can see how beautiful this bishop is already here. Bishop g6 going away, not letting even to trade it. And now there is a big threat, actually, queen f5 with a threat of a checkmate. Queen h3, bishop f5, attacking the queen. Queen goes back to g3, and now f6. We are going to go for the knight a5, queen a4, all these ideas against the queen on the queen's side. It's going to be very tough for white to do something, especially after this f6 move where we stop ideas of knight jumping into the position. In case of bishop d3 immediately, here we are using our idea of the bishop e7 move, which I was talking about earlier, and it's bishop h4. So bishop h4, targeting the queen. We want queen to leave that perfect square. So queen h3 not working because of d5. Our bishop is very happy. Queen f3 going away, the only square. Rook e8, and we can already see in this position that there is not much of a compensation for the pawn for white. So let's say queen h4 is being played. Knight e5 attacking the bishop, also centralizing the piece on the e4, very beautiful square. Bishop c2, d5. Finally, we push for the d5. Knight f3, knight takes f3. In case pawn takes, we take a pawn on f2, but in case queen takes, there is a bishop e6. Clearly better position for black, and, well, no compensation for the pawn. In case of queen h5, creating a big threat, a huge threat. We have to do something about it, and we play g6. g6 is very logical. After queen h6, we play knight e5. We are attacking the bishop, which is a beautiful piece. We are threatening knight g4. And after bishop e2, we play d6. So knight g4 is not a question anymore, but what we want to do, we want to play bishop f6, bishop g7, fianchetto the bishop again. The other bishop is going to be brought to the f5 square, cutting the position of the king again. We could create another attack. We could do a lot of things. We can just also simply trade some pieces and go to the winning endgame, but definitely there is no compensation for the pawn, and position is completely winning for black. Not for white, for black. Knight f3, trying to develop with the knight and trying to prevent all the ideas of the bishop coming to h4, which looks very, very logical. Rook a4. Our rook, brilliant rook from the e4, is trying to attack the pawn, creating some threats. In case of king b1, d5 is pretty much, we can say, over, because bishop f5 is a huge threat. At the same time, also rook coming to the g4 is an enormous threat, so it's lost. Bishop d3, trying to stop all these ideas of bishop f5 in the future, and saying that we can take the pawn. Okay, the problem, of course, after rook takes on a2 is that white is going to create a counterattack on our king, so we have to be really careful not to rush into taking any pawns. We have already an extra pawn. It's enough. We just have to create an attack. That's why we play d5 here, and our main idea is that we have bishop d6 opportunities. So we tried with a bishop h4 in the position to kick the queen out, but we didn't succeed. So we try with a bishop d6 now. Bishop f4, trying to stop that idea. We play bishop d6 anyway. Bishop d6, cd. And now again, the threats of rook coming to g4 is there. Rook is perfectly placed on the a4, attacking the pawn on e2, creating the threat of the rook g4. h6 makes a lot of sense, prophylactical move, stopping the knight g5 ideas. And of course, potentially there could be some problems with the back rank, which have to be stopped. And of course, something like bishop e6 could be a move. We have double pawn, double extra pawn, but definitely there are more than that to the position, and our attack definitely makes more sense than white's attack on our king. That was actually all in this chapter. But now let us go through some key moments, key positions, and key ideas of this chapter. And let's try to memorize some maybe typical motifs, typical ideas, which we have to bring out from this chapter. So one of the ideas also throughout this chapter and whole course probably is that we shouldn't be afraid of trading the queens. Trading queen is not equalizing, or is not, sorry, not equalizing, but not equal simplifying the position. In this case, we're taking with the queen. Even though we're down a material, we're allowing the queen trade, but we're trading the only active piece of the white pieces of the white. And we're going to have a very nice endgame. We were discussing it already earlier. Just one more reminder. Yes, so in this position, last move of white was bishop g5, attacking the queen. So here, we don't want to rush with the f6 because we still have to make a couple of moves to castle. And also playing knight f6 is going to bring us, just going to put us into some trouble due to the pinning ourselves. We don't want to pin ourselves. So knight g7 is a very beautiful move in this position. Just stopping the pin and introducing later in the position f6 after we would castle first and then we would play f6. Yes, so, okay, first of all, we played h6 and the position h6 makes a lot of sense, attacking the bishop. Bishop goes away to h4. And one more concept which we're talking about all the time, we have to look out for d5 ideas. If we see the d5 idea is working out, we have to seriously consider it. So in this particular case, g5 and d5 move is possible, and we have to consider it. Does it work? If yes, let's go for it. In this particular case, it's working brilliantly. The next position was when queen was coming back to the e2 square. We were discussing this position that if queen is queen is coming to d4, then there is no sense in playing rook e8. But queen is on e2, so rook e8 makes a lot of sense. We are creating ideas of pushing for d5 due to this X-ray. Rook is located brilliantly. We don't have to slow down with d6 and then later at some moment playing d5, but we can actually point out immediately rook e8, d5. Let's go. Oh, the next position. Yes, well, again, okay, this position, I would say we start with following. We're down a piece in this position. But just comparing a development and the whole concept of this chapter and maybe some other positions from the other chapter is that the material is not everything. We sacrifice the piece, but after rook e8, we just have completely, I don't want to say winning position, but we have big chances in this position to win due to our activity, due to our development. We're going to capture another pawn. We have the bishop, knight, rook already into the game. We'll bring out some other pieces. Great positions, great chances for black. So don't be afraid of sacrificing pieces for the development. And not only pieces, but material generally. Next position, another highlight that if we have opportunity to play d5, we have to consider it. If we see there is nothing wrong, we don't lose a pawn, then we should consider it. And in this case, again, the d5 is the move. Okay, next position is the rook was under attack. Aha, and here the thing was, in some lines we went with rook all the way to e8, but in this particular case, we want to go to e6, and this is a very nice concept, a very nice motif. We first of all, we defend the knight on f6 at some moment, and we want to play rook to d6. Very nice square for the rook, and it's very unusual, but it's very important motif in these chapters. All right. Yes, the next position is when the queen is not coming to e2, where it's covering b5, but to e1 all the way. In this case, we can push for b5, immediately sacrificing a pawn. Again, another reminder, don't be afraid to sacrifice pawn or material, because after knight takes, we push forward with a pawn. We attack, we gave up a pawn and then we attack with every move. We're just going forward, queen b6. we would like to push for d5, d4, and bring in the rook. So if we can sacrifice a piece, a pawn for an open file, if we can do something like this is where we should consider it. We should calculate it. And I would say the final position is going to be, we just had it just very recently. It's very fresh. It was still in our memories. So after c3 attacking the bishop f8 looks like a very logical, very calm, and very natural move. But bishop e7, with ideas of playing bishop h4, stopping h4 itself, is a very good idea and very topical motif in these positions. So that was it for today. It was a center game chapter. I'm looking forward to see you in the next chapter. Bye bye.